Welcome, everybody. This is Planet Green Trees. I'm your host, Michael Komorn. We are Michigan's premier blog talk medical cannabis and cannabis reform radio show. Tonight's episode is 182. We are calling it The Truth About Kush. Tonight is January 16, 2014. Calling number is 1-347-326-9626. And in the studio to bring you, help me, provide for you nothing but the most up-to-date and informative news and happenings in the medical cannabis and cannabis reform community. Chad from the Birmingham Compassion Club.
Good evening. It's nice to be here. That's much better. This microphone.
And again, back on my shoulder, sitting right on my lap here, the one and only Eric Gunnels, Thetford Township trustee. Text him at 810-875-7395. Don't call. Text, says the card. Welcome, Eric.
Please.
Hey, thank you.
Eric is leading the way in technology in the ever-evolving Thetford Township, and they are no longer taking calls.
Only text.
Encrypted.
And that's right. And running the security detail for Thetford Township trustee, the one and only Theo. Thank you for being here, Theo.
Good evening. It's nice to be anywhere.
Maybe you don't know, but Theo helped evolve this show to be the masterpiece that it has become, or not, maybe. But thanks for coming back.
Certainly a masterpiece.
Missing and unaccounted for our dear friends and colleagues, Rick Thompson, who hoping is going to call in from the news and give us the updates. Everyone wants to know what's happening. And, of course, our one and only producer, Jamie Lowe of Third Coast Compassion, other contributors to the show. So we don't know what their whereabouts are. Someone's going to have to call in and let us know where they are. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the recently elected Detroit City Councilman and former State Representative George Cushingberry, along with cannabis reform activist Richard Clemente. Were involved in a controversial traffic stop that resulted in a really, can only be described as a heavy media attention. Also, a local Michigan activist and Michigan Norml board member visits D.C. and was able to sit in attendance and observe the council's vote to decriminalize cannabis. He was also able to discuss reform issues with the Michigan reps Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters, as well as national advocates from American Safe Access and Marijuana Policy Project. A visit with POW Ryan Basore and a friend of PGT and the community at large was included in the trip as well. Joining us tonight will be Ron Mitchell, who represents Councilman Cushingberry in the aftermath of the controversial traffic stop and ensuing media frenzy. He's going to be joining us to discuss what exactly happened and what is going on with the situation. And the aforementioned tripper to Washington, D.C. that sat in on those meetings was our one and only Steve Sharp, Michigan Norml board member, contributor to the successful local initiative in Jackson. He'll be updating on his travels to the nation's capital. I'm going to rant a little while. And all those that were worried, we have now found the whereabouts of our missing parties. Rick Thompson has arrived of the Compassion Chronicles, the one only editor-in-chief, and the producer, Jamie Lowell. I remind everyone, if you do not enjoy the show, complain to Jamie, not me.
That's right. Complain to Jamie, not me.
Welcome, gentlemen. You guys okay? I imagine you're going to blame the weather or something like that.
No.
I'm glad.
It's tardy.
You're feeding the dogs now?
The roads are pretty bad out there. That's what it was.
I want to give a couple of shout-outs, first of all, to my dear friends Pam and Dewey. Dewey and I are going to be loading up the magic carpet and heading to Washtenaw County tomorrow morning for a little Section 8 hearing. So get it all ready. And Pam, of course, is going to be making sure that Dewey's there on time as she does. So thanks to both of you two. And the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association, MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. Thanks to all the moderators and the administrators who help assist evolve the community in evolving the conversation about medical cannabis. Komorn Law, 1-800-656-3557. The Marijuana Ranch, call 313-422-5281 if you have questions about cannabis culture and want to tour the cultural center. Dr. Kumar Singh of the Greenlight Clinic, 248-390-0574. 248-390-0574. As I say week after week, and as I get ready for various Section 8 hearings, the cooperation by the physician calling back, providing records, providing affidavits, coming to court, preparing, makes all the difference in your defense. Go to a gold standard doctor. As we've talked about last week, we've identified some. There are more that exist out there. We want to hear if you know of them. Let's get them on the show and hear them tell their protocol that fits the Section 8 defense as we propose. But Dr. Kumar Singh, as I can attest, is one that conforms with those rules and is prepared to justify his recommendations. And last week, I would encourage those to listen to episode 181, where we had the revisiting of the bona fide doctor-patient relationship, and much contribution from the one and only Dr. Robert Townsend, Dr. Bob, and the crew. So thanks to all those persons. And I was thinking about doing 2 or 3 rants tonight since we only have 1 or 2 guests, but I'm going to save this second intro rant for our guests when they call, but I'm going to roll with this one right here. Being a lawyer, unfortunately, most of my days are spent in court or talking about going to court or what's going to happen when I get into court. I can tell you that courtrooms are really meant for criminals, or said another way, people accused of crimes, but certainly not medical marijuana patients. The story that we've heard all too many times is about individuals who, as of 2008, recognized that the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act was meant to protect people and not create exceptions for law enforcement to try to find in the protections to arrest. But Sal Agro, Brian Vaughn, and Torrey Clark are individuals that are those people that have been dragged in and seemingly unprotected by the act as it was intended. Individuals dealing with severe and debilitating conditions. Sal and Brian both had severe and chronic pain. Torrey has cancer. They're each victims of what I would describe as an overbearing sheriff's department and prosecutors' misuse of public resources and criminal prosecution of patients to create settled law throughout the county and the Michigan Court of Appeals. Since the election of Attorney Bill Schuette, the Attorney General, 2010, they have been functioning in concert. Some might call it conspiring to enact a strict law enforcement policy regarding the law meant to broadly protect medical marijuana patients and their caregivers. They have done this by using patients as test cases, engaging in felony prosecution of patients for alleged violations of the Act, such as an unlocked grow room door or 2 patients' plants kept together. And these kind of exceptions are the exceptions that they want to make cases out of. I sat across from a prosecutor in a pretrial up in Standish this past week, and the quantity of marijuana was minuscule. It was transported in a place that was not accessible to my client, and as they tried to talk me into resolving the matter, I told them that they should probably nully prosecute the case. She reached into her court file and pulled out and had the audacity to say to me, "Are you familiar with this case of People versus Carruthers?" And I said, "Yes, I am very familiar with that. I'm familiar with that case. And let me tell you about his other case, by the way. But in terms of the case you're talking about, if I understand things, you are suggesting that case was rightly decided and that you think that patients' only method of ingestion should be by smoke." She said, No. I'm just suggesting that this is what the law is. I said, well, this law is going to be overturned, and in fact, just a couple weeks ago, half the legislature voted overwhelmingly, like in a vote that rarely happens, that is bad law. But you want to stick with that? You want to try to find an exception that's going to make this prosecution valid? Go ahead, because I'm going to produce for you a medical defense that is going to destroy you. Nevertheless, back to my rant. Sal Agro was an individual who had a heart attack in the days immediately following the paramilitary raids at his home in Lake Orion. His wife, Barb, survived him, and though cheated out of a fair trial on her first trip through the Oakland County Circuit Court by prosecutors bent on concealing the truth rather than promoting justice and the fair application of the law, was vindicated by the Court of Appeals, who remanded her for a new trial, a trial where she would be allowed to speak about her medical use of marijuana, for which she had been charged with a felony. She was gagged during the first trial to the ridiculous end of her redacted statement, when all mention of medical was removed, amounted to confusion. This is not the prosecution seeking justice for the state of Michigan. It's a prosecution for political reasons. My dear friend, and someone who I would say had become family after what we'd gone through, died of accidental overdoses of pain pills. He was on probation, conditioned on discontinuing his use of medical marijuana, necessitating his return to prescription medication. 4 days after an epidural spinal injection due to severe head, neck, and shoulder pain, which had plagued him his entire life, a slight change in dosage of his pain medication, Brian was found by his wife dead on his porch. Brian was keenly aware of the effects both his pain and his pain medication had on his life, and had made the choice to use medical marijuana for health and well-being. This choice, even though approved by a physician, was denied to him by Oakland County Circuit Court that routinely substitutes its own judgment for that of licensed physicians of the state of Michigan. And last but not least, and only one of several who have experienced the same thing, the one and only Tori Clark is now in hospice. Not 2 years after the prosecutor in that county declared in court her to be fit as a fiddle, noting it's only ovarian cancer. Judge Robert Redden, her co-defendant, Circuit Court, will soon be filing a petition to the court to allow him to bring her home and drive her to and from doctor to monitor her final days and help to relieve her suffering. He's a restricted license from being on probation at Oakland County Circuit Court after being prosecuted for almost 4 years. He and Tori ultimately pled guilty to a misdemeanor to relieve themselves of the burden of the continued criminal prosecution, were sentenced to 6 months now reporting probation. This was nearly 4 years after the case was dismissed in 2009 by Madison Heights District Court judge and appealed all the way to the Court of Appeals by our favorite prosecutor's office. And after trying to gag them, keep them from mentioning medical marijuana in a case where the threat of criminal prosecution was made to two doctors by which they were compelled to take the Fifth Amendment to protect their own interests and not testify on behalf of their own patients, was nothing more than a denial of justice, a concealment of truth, and a mistreatment of patients through the substitution of police, prosecutors, and judges in place of doctors. Unequivocally, the people that I just mentioned, all three of them, and their co-defendant Robert Redden, and Barb Agro, 5 people right there, all prosecuted inhumanely, where 10 out of 10 doctors that evaluated their charge would unequivocally all say that they were people that met the criteria to be medical marijuana patients. And the beef and the attack, and the only thing that could be argued would be the attack on the doctor-patient relationship. The voters of the state of Michigan voted to permit the use of medical marijuana by patients with qualifying conditions. The strict anti-patient policy implemented by this county and the circuit court, which refuses to acknowledge medical marijuana as a medicine despite the voters' clear directive, is a tragic waste of public resources. Oakland County residents should remember this waste when they are called upon to vote for incumbent judges, prosecutors, and sheriffs. I argued in my last jury trial there that this prosecutor's office and the police had put on a facade, that they weren't being honest. That when I asked the detective in charge to, instead of draw the conclusions that the marijuana issue was nothing more than an amount for trafficking, and I sent him 9 published pieces on what is a proper dosing for a patient, he said, "You know what, Mr. Komorn, I didn't read it. I just threw it out." And I looked at that jury and said, how can you even respect that? This officer, and this is in Oakland County, of course, this officer was called to the stand as an expert to offer an opinion on the amount of marijuana, whether it was traditionally used for trafficking or could be an amount for a patient. And without ever spending any time with a patient ever, other than in a criminal investigation or a caregiver, offered an opinion about what is a proper amount for medical use, and then acknowledged throwing out the mounds of studies of what is a proper amount. I said, did you ever hear of this guy, Irv Roosevelt? Did you know that the federal government sends him 10 ounces of marijuana a month? Does that impact your opinion on that my client's 4 ounces that was found in his closet that was soaking wet? Does that change your opinion whether that could be an amount that was used for medical versus trafficking? Well, there was no answer in that regard. And in sum, this is still something we're faced with. And while every week, especially in the last weeks, we've been acknowledging the evolution and momentum that has taken place in both the marijuana reform and the medical cannabis provisioning centers and the momentum that's taken place at the legislative level. There still are these places. There still are police officers finding loopholes and taking every piece of property and every piece of value that you've earned over your lifetime because they can. And there still remains problems. There's still a lot to be done, and we're going to talk about some of that tonight. That's the Rant. You're listening to Planet Green Trees. We are going to take a quick break. The call number is 1-347-326-9626. We'll be right back.